Welcome to the Midlife Sex Coach for Women podcast, the only show that combines a fun personality, medical knowledge, sexual counseling, and life coaching together to create unique sex coaching that helps busy women awaken their libidos, address intimacy issues, and learn how to express their sexuality for the rest of their days. Here's your host, certified life coach and sexual counselor, Dr. Sonia Wright.
Hello, Diamonds. You are listening to the Midlife Sex Coach for Women podcast, episode 243. What? It is so good to be here with you. What's happening in my life? Same old, being a parent, being a sex coach, being a partner, being a mom. I think I said that. What else is going on in my life? Adjusting to only having 2 kids in the house instead of 3 since we dropped one of our babies off at college. She was homesick at the beginning. Now she's having a great life and doesn't really want to talk to me no more, but that's okay. That's what life is all about. And I have you. I have all my diamonds to be there for and talk about things. And I've been really thinking a lot about something, and I want to talk to you today about that. So today, I want to talk about something that I believe can really change not only sexual intimacy, but your relationships, your emotional well-being, and ultimately the way you move through your life. What could this be? Okay, it comes down to a simple word, and that word is the gap, right? The gap. It's the space between what happens to you and what you do next. The space between the trigger and the response, between the emotions that rise up in your body and the actions that you choose to take. And because, my diamonds, true intimacy is found in the gap. I really believe that this is something that's important. How did this come about? My partner and I have been being more intentional in the way that we speak to each other, and being more intentional in the way we speak to each other required a gap. It required me to develop a skill where I didn't say the first bullshit thing that came out of my mouth, but I allowed the gap to occur. I allowed some space to be there. And with the allowing and the gap, I realized that there's a different way that I can say things. There's a different way I can react to things, and it can lead to the ultimate outcome that I want. And so that's why I want to share this with you, because true intimacy is found in the gap. And so is your power in so many situations. So let's start off by talking about the fact that the trigger is not the problem. Let's start there. So we spend a lot of time trying to eliminate our triggers. We think, if only my partner would stop doing this, I wouldn't be so upset. If they would stop asking me for sex all the time, I wouldn't feel so pressured. If they would just communicate the way I want them to, I wouldn't have to get angry. It's all about them changing so that you don't have to respond a certain way. If I had more help around the house, I wouldn't feel resentful. If my body would cooperate during perimenopause and menopause, I wouldn't feel anxious about things, right? If my hormones would settle down, I wouldn't be so whatever it is that comes after that, right? So in all these situations, it's all about the circumstances have to change in order for your response to change. There's nothing about behaviors needing boundaries, relationship dynamics needing to be addressed. And often we can't control what happens around us, but we can control what happens inside of us. So that's why I'm talking about self-regulation. Internal self-regulation doesn't mean that you don't have these emotions. You get to have your emotions. We all have emotions, right? It doesn't mean that you have to be calm and peaceful and zen all the time. It doesn't mean that you don't get to feel angry. It doesn't mean that you never feel rejected. It doesn't mean you never get to feel anxious or irritated or overwhelmed or hurt. Like, your emotions are your emotions and you get to feel them. But self-regulation means that you learn how to have an emotion without immediately allowing that emotion to dictate your behavior. You can have an emotion, you get to have a gap in there, and then you choose what behavior you want. It's not like I have an emotion and whack, then I start with this certain behavior. there's a difference, and that difference gets to be important. The first emotion doesn't have to make the decision for you. Let's imagine something. You're sitting on the couch. It's been a long day. You're tired. Maybe you're scrolling peacefully in the corner. There's something about somebody just relaxing that it's not allowed to stay that way. Maybe you're watching TV. Maybe you're finally getting that 5 minutes that your body needs. And then your partner comes up and sits down and they're like, hey, you want to have some sex tonight? And immediately, bam, something happens inside your body. Maybe it's anxiety. It's like, oh, here we go again. Maybe it's guilt. Oh, I haven't had sex with them in like 2 weeks. I really should. Maybe it's anger. Why does it always have to be about sex? Maybe it's resentment. You haven't paid attention to me all week, but suddenly in my 5 minutes of peace, you're here trying to get something, right? Maybe it's fear. If I say no, are they going to be upset? Maybe it's pressure. I guess I have to. It's on my to-do list and it's the next thing that I need to do, right? Maybe your body just tightens up. And before you consciously understand what you're feeling, your nervous system decides that there's danger in the house. And then there's the reaction. It's like snap, like in 2 seconds. You're like, no, why are you always asking me? Can't you just leave me alone? All I want is a minute's peace. Is that all you ever think about? Or maybe you don't yell. Maybe you just shut down. You're like, "Ugh," and you just close it all down. Maybe you roll your eyes. Maybe you freeze. Maybe you say yes when you really just want to say no. Maybe you just kind of ignore that they even asked a question. You hope that they'll go away. Maybe you suddenly remember that there's something you have to do upstairs. All of these responses are giving you some information. But here's what I want you to know. Your initial emotional response does not have to immediately translate into a behavioral response. So let's talk about that gap. Welcome to the gap. There's a gap, and it might only initially be like 3 seconds. Maybe it's 10 seconds. But that gap is enough to be like, let me think about this. Or maybe it's, I'm noticing I'm having some feelings and a reaction right now. Just give me a second. Or can I get back to you in 20 minutes? And the gap might be something external that you create in the situation in the moment with your partner. Or it could be something internal where you're like, what am I feeling now? What's going on? But during this gap, something incredible is happening. You become the observer of your experience. Instead of being like angry, you're like, oh, I'm angry. And I'm noticing this anger is coming up for me in this situation. Instead of just being like, I don't want sex, maybe it's, I'm noticing anxiety is coming up when my partner asks me about sex. Then you get curious. You can get to be, and I love curiosity. It's always like curiosity is a beautiful, neutral way to address any type of issue. So when you get curious, you're like, why? Why is this anxiety coming up? Why is this anger coming up? What is happening? What am I making this request mean? What's happening inside my body? What exactly am I experiencing? What do I want? That gap allows you to ask those questions. And these questions, the answers to the question, they give you information and they allow you the time to process instead of just like a knee-jerk reaction. And this is something important to understand. You don't have to fix the emotion. Whatever emotion comes up for you, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with whatever emotion's coming up for you. So we think self-regulation means that we have to make an uncomfortable emotion disappear. That's not self-regulation. In order to regulate, you have to be able to acknowledge that there is an emotion coming up and then make a choice about that. So you don't have to get rid of anger. Anger, I think, is a very healthy thing. It helps you with boundaries. You don't have to get rid of resentment. And you get to feel anxious, right? And you don't have to make yourself suddenly be ready for sex. And you also don't have to put a positive spin or thought on top of every one of your real reactions. So simply, the work is, there you are. You just talk to your emotion. Oh, hello, anger. Why? It's my friend fear. Ooh, guilt is coming up. resentment, sadness, disappointment, anxiety. What is the emotion? What are you feeling? All of these emotions get to be okay. What if we let them be there? What if we didn't judge or block? But also, what if we didn't immediately hand them a microphone where they get to yell and scream? What if emotions were just information? Emotions don't always need to translate into instructions or directions or actions right away. And this is the distinction. You get to have emotions and you don't have to react right away. You get to choose to allow the emotion, but that doesn't mean you have to have a knee-jerk reaction to something. So my emotions can give me information without giving me instructions. You get to create the instructions as to what you want the next step or the next action to be, right? So this is where you give the instructions. You ask yourself, what outcome do I actually want? Instead of that knee-jerk reaction leading to an outcome you don't want, what is the outcome you want? And that gap allows you to ask that question as well. Once you've created a little bit of space, ask yourself another question. What is the end result that I actually want here? Not what will make me feel better for the next 30 seconds if I yell at somebody, but what is the end result? Not what will punish my partner and distract them, not what will get me out of this conversation as quickly as possible, but what is the result that I actually want? What is the result that I actually want here? Do you want more loving relationship? Then you get to choose that outcome, and your actions are important because that's what will lead to your results. If you want better communication, start with better words, safer words, kinder words. Maybe you want to feel safer by saying no. Maybe you want to explore your desire without pressure. You get to have a conversation with your partner. I'd like to explore my libido, my pleasure, my desire, but I need to figure out a way to do this without feeling pressured. How can we do this? Maybe you want to reconnect sexually, connect with yourself and then with your partner. Maybe you want to feel like your body belongs to you. This is where it becomes important. What is the result that you want? Maybe you simply want to be able to relax and tell the truth. I don't really want sex right now. Now look at that initial emotion and the initial reaction that you wanted to have. Will that move you towards the outcome you want? Or will it move you away from it? Because if your first reaction is to yell, why are you always bothering me about sex? But the outcome you want is a loving, connected relationship. Those two are not going together, right? The yelling, the insulting your partner probably isn't going to move you towards that outcome you actually want of loving kindness. And also, this doesn't mean that you have to say yes to sex. If it's not what you want, you don't have to say yes. And hear me out on this. Self-regulation is not self-abandonment. So what I'm saying is you regulate your emotions. You figure out what you want your result is. You don't just give it up and be like, okay, I guess I'll just have sex because I can't feel this emotion. That's not what I'm saying. The goal is not to regulate yourself so that you're compliant. The goal is not to override the no that you wanted, because consent is such an important part of here, and the goal is not to prioritize your partner's comfort over your own boundaries, but the goal is to give yourself enough space that you get to choose what response you want that is in alignment with the outcome that you want, instead of reacting based on a trigger and a set of emotions without that self-regulation. So your regulated response might be something like, no, I don't want sexual intimacy tonight. But instead of saying, get away from me, you can actually say, I don't want sex tonight, but I would love a cuddle. I don't want sex tonight. Are there other alternatives? I need a little downtime. What can we do to still stay connected, right? You could also be like, I'm noticing when you asked me, I immediately felt pressure. And this is not to blame the other person. This is the I statement. I'm feeling pressure. And I don't think that's what you intended at all, but it is what's coming up for me. Can we talk about this? Like, you get to have that conversation and you get to work together as a team. So you could simply say, tonight is a no, but I love you and I want us to stay connected. You get to have boundaries, and that actually, that sentence right there, it's a complete different energy from yelling and screaming, right? So you get to do it with kindness and you get to do it with respect. And that is a choice that's going to lead to you having that relationship that you want, right? So the longer the gap that you have, the more choices you actually create for yourself. So this is where this gap becomes really powerful and empowering. And this is why I say the empowerment is found in the gap. When there's no gap, we have few choices. We're triggered. We're just responding. We've got emotion, reaction, trigger, emotion, reaction again and again and again. And then those reactions become patterns, right? Your partner asks for sex, you feel pressure, you get angry, and then you say something, your partner feels rejected. Everybody is in the same situation. Your partner feels rejected, they withdraw, they feel abandoned. You become resentful because they're feeling rejected, you're feeling abandoned. And there's so much going on here. But if we could just slow it down, slow the response time down, have thoughtful actions or responses in there coming from a place of what's going on with me? What am I feeling? And ownership of the responsibility of your emotions, that's an important part of this, right? We don't want it to get to the point where this cascade happens, the withdrawal, the abandonment, the resentfulness, the lack of intimacy overall, right? And then you start thinking this lack of affection is that they don't care about you. And suddenly you're both standing on very opposite sides of a relationship, wondering, how did I get here? And it just might start as one little tiny reaction over time, and it builds and it builds and it builds and it's building on it. But if you have that gap, even if it's slight, then things change. There's a trigger, there's a response. There's emotions, there's curiosity, there's choice. Then there's another response. Do you see how you get that? And you only get that from that gap. That's a completely different pattern. There's a way in which you can say, you are fabulous, and I'm really not in the mood for sex right now, but I do want to hold you, right? And then the partner doesn't feel rejected. You don't feel abandoned. You get to come together and be like, okay, maybe tonight's not going to work. What is a better time that works for us? What time would work? I'm better in the afternoon these days. What time can we make it happen? Like, these are the questions and the conversations that have to occur. But when there's a trigger and a gut wrenching type of response, you don't have that gap in there and you don't have the ability to protect that relationship, right? So the longer that you can stay in the gap, the more choices you have available to you. Not because the emotions disappear, your emotions are still there. You have the chance to make a choice that's more in alignment with the outcome that you want. That's what I'm talking about. And this doesn't have to just be for sexual intimacy. It really applies in all different areas. There's a trigger, your partner forgets something important. A trigger, someone criticizes you at work. A trigger, you receive an email and your stomach drops. There's a trigger, someone doesn't text you back. Trigger, your partner walks into a room with a certain look on their face, and suddenly your brain has written like this 14-chapter novel as to what's happening, right? All of these things are triggering your nervous system. And then you choose to protect, to fight, flight, freeze, fawn, defend, right? Attack, withdraw. And that's all based on different emotions you're feeling. Feel the emotions and stop. You don't have to go straight into the next reaction part of it. You can just be like, I don't have to do anything at this moment. I can acknowledge something's happened, some sort of trigger has happened. I am responding with a set of emotions. I'm going to get curious about that emotions and I'm going to stay in the gap. I don't have to respond yet. I don't have to solve it. I don't have to answer the email. I can stay in this gap and get to that place where I evaluate my emotions and decide if I want to react based on this emotion or do I want to shift my emotion, right? So something that's important to understand is this gap is where intimacy can grow. Let's go back specifically to intimacy, because intimacy requires enough emotional safety for two or more people to tell the truth, to talk. In order to get vulnerable, people need to feel safe. And sometimes the truth is, I want you. Sometimes the truth is, I don't want sex tonight. Sometimes I want sexual intimacy, but I don't want penetration. Sometimes it's, I'm interested, but my body needs more time. Like, all these things require conversation, and vulnerable conversation that requires consent and safety. When I say consent, yes, there's consent for the sexual intimacy, but there's consent to have a conversation in a safe, vulnerable manner, right? And this is where it's important to be able to have that conversation and say what exactly is going on. Maybe you're feeling like, I'm scared that if I start something, you'll expect me to finish. I miss you, but I don't know how to find my way back to you, right? I'm not feeling that connection I need to have in order to have the sexual intimacy, right? Um, this may require us to be able to tolerate emotional discomfort. And part of the work of being in the gap is being able to learn to tolerate the emotional discomfort as well, right? So it requires us to stop that knee-jerk reaction long enough for us to actually understand what's going on with ourselves and to listen to our partner. And that's why I say that true intimacy is found in the gap. The gap gives you this zone of sexual safety, and it allows this to happen, right? So, because the gap is where you meet yourself first, and when you can meet yourself and get curious about the emotions without judgment, allow all the emotions, then you're able to meet the other person, and you're able to choose an action that will lead and get you closer to the result that you want. Okay, diamonds, I think that's all for now. So good talking to you, and I will talk to you soon. Okay, Dr. Sonia out. How do you create amazing intimacy when you're navigating perimenopause, menopause, changing hormones, changing bodies, changing desire, and honestly, just the realities of midlife? That's exactly what we're going to talk about in my upcoming Reignite Masterclass. Join me on September 14th at 7 p.m. Central Time as I teach you how to create the intimate life that you want using my Reignite method. We're going to talk about what may be getting in the way of your intimacy, why desire can feel so different in midlife, and how you can move away from shame, pressure, and all those shoulds and towards more connection, pleasure, and intimacy on your terms. And I'll be also sharing about the 12-week Reignite coaching program and how we'll be taking these concepts and going even deeper together. So, diamonds, if you're ready to stop wondering what's happening to your intimate life and start intentionally creating what you want for your next chapter, this masterclass is for you. So mark your calendars, September 14th at 7 p.m. Central Time. I can't wait to see you there, because midlife isn't the end of amazing intimacy. It really is just the beginning. Alrighty, Dr. Sonia out.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Midlife Sex Coach for Women podcast. If you enjoyed Dr. Sonia's fun and caring approach to sexual intimacy, head to soniawrightmd.com to learn more.